Hello, I'm Zay, also known as Zaezar, as some people call me, but just call me Zay. Um, and I am going to be talking about self-critiquing yourself. Yes, just self-critiquing yourself. That's a good phrase with which my brain says. And look at that, more people are showing up. Um, but self-critique is something that is kind of a weird enigma where it seems like I don't see that a whole lot, even though it's one of the best ways to improve yourself. And even stranger still is that when some people, when they self-critique themselves, do it way too harshly, and they don't end up learning anything. They just think their stuff looks bad at the end, and it's a really missed opportunity actually. Because then like they beat themselves up too much, and then suddenly you have someone who might end up stopping because they think their stuff isn't so good. When in reality they just beat themselves up too much. I know I'm saying beat up too much, but I mean whatever. Um, so what I'm going to be doing in this stream is going through some of my older pieces, things that I want to improve, things that I have done wrong, and show you where I may have gone wrong with it, what I should have done better, and where you can find these same problems in your own pieces. Um, this isn't strictly for artists as well. This is like learning how to critique and learning how to get a critiquing eye is an important lesson in, well, if a friend says that something of theirs just looks a little bit off, you can probably jump in with some pointers that might help them out. Um, I learned how to do this for the most part from my college experience when this was almost a daily routine, and it's something that I've had to employ words. I had to employ in a lot of my own pieces. But sometimes I'm really bad at taking my own advice because things take more time sometimes. You know what? We're not going to be getting into that. Let's start off by actually taking a look at a piece I started in October. Um, so this was actually the character that is the main uh, yeah, is the main character for my streams actually. Win, but I made her into like a Wendigo. You see the joke? Um, it was kind of an Inktober thing, not really an Inktober thing, but I personally really love this piece. In fact, it was more so just an excuse to ink a lot. Um, and that's something that I absolutely love to do. But I got absolutely lost in that, which is kind of a mistake. I didn't take the time to actually really pick it apart in the early stages. I kind of went straight into the ink, which is instantly something to be careful of. So instead of like breaking down the sketch, how this whole thing is built, and like taking a look at the anatomy of it before I got started, I was like, all right, sketch is good enough. This piece is traditional. It is done with a fountain pen for the thin lines and for all this you see in the background, and a brush pen I own for the solid black and for the solid black and the shading. So that is what this piece is specifically. I believe the rest of the pieces in this are all going to be digital, but I felt that this was a really good thing to start on because this really exemplifies a lot of the early mistakes you can catch. Now, I initially the piece actually looks really nice. At least I thought it looked really nice, but there's some things that I should have slowed down on, and slowing down on your own pieces is something that is kind of a important thing to know how to do because that's how you catch your mistakes. And speeding through the whole thing while you can get your end piece done sooner, slowing down and just taking a couple extra minutes can help you out a lot. So let's actually start breaking this thing down. So to make this piece, I actually did as I normally do. I did the sketch for the body, like did the spine, hip placements, where all the joints go, all this stuff. Now, and then of course this goes into the back. In fact, if we're lucky, and if I was just a little bit not noticing, yep, you can actually see a little bit of the sketch still. So that was an early form where the knee was back here. That's where you see these lines. But I did a couple of things wrong, as is kind of what this whole panel is going to be about. What I ended up doing was I didn't pay attention enough to my sketch. Now, I just showed you the sketch here, right? this is essentially what I started with, and then I added in more details like the ear and this, and then once I had it like how I liked it, I erased most of it and then did the inking. But I didn't pay attention to this enough because as I wanted this to be a wall that this character was climbing out of or climbing through, but the best way to put it was I made it look like they're tiptoeing instead of crawling through a wall. And this was pointed out to me almost immediately after the thing was posted up, and I can only agree with them. It looks like they're doing a really silly tiptoe that you expect a cartoon character to do as like, I'm gonna get you. Instead of this, honestly, something that could have been a lot more creepy and eerie to start off the October season. So where I went wrong was thinking, oh, everyone is going to totally get that this is sitting on like the other side of this wall, right? Like the back of their foot is resting on this. Rule number 1, don't make assumptions that your viewers will know what you're trying to achieve. You have to make it clear that what you're trying to do is what they're going to see. Because making the assumption that they'll know is a very wrong assumption. Now, of course, people will look into things and see things that may not be there initially. I'm actually going to talk about that in a future piece that you may not have attended in the first place at all. But if you can like mitigate at least some assumptions, it'd be really helpful. So things like this could have been a lot creepier of a piece if I had like, I don't know, dragged this line over here and made it like this opening instead and have their foot resting on this part instead. Bring their leg up, move the arm up here because then it'll be in the proper spot. Then it'll be proper spot to be seen. And you could actually see where the foot was resting on. And that might actually lead a lot into this like creepy character walking through a wall. Of course, also there's this hand that I'm not a huge fan of, actually. It just seems like it's kind of awkwardly shaped in how it's built. I probably should have dragged it up just a little bit more, maybe gave an assumption of a thumb, but instead it looks like or I could have actually drawn it backwards where only their fingers were coming over the edge. Like their hand is really dragged in the back here. Better than every single hand you've ever drawn ever. Well, one thing that I'm going to say is that I am my own worst critic, but I think I could have done a lot better with this hand. It's not to say it's not a good hand. It is absolutely a good hand, but it's not a great one. And that's where I have a little bit of a problem with, because I can immediately spot where it went wrong. That's not because it's complimenting my hands. And your artistic talent is to hide hands. That is like my biggest problem with people is when they actively hide the hands. It's like, come on, you're not going to improve on them. Like for every hand you hide, at least like take out a sketchbook and doodle 2 of them, so at least you get better on it. So you don't have to keep on doing that. Oh my god. But that's this piece. So this is where we start off. Now, next piece. This is another really big problem, actually one that I still struggle with a lot. I guess you can say I struggle with all of these things, but because these are all my pieces, but this is one that I constantly am seeing as a problem in my own pieces. Don't avoid black and don't avoid white. I don't care what your reasoning is. Straight white is useful in a lot of situations, and if I actually do have an issue with straight white, but I do go just slightly off white so it doesn't hide the highlights. But like straight white is incredibly useful and straight black is incredibly useful, and how different those are is really, really good to put focus on a piece and focus on specific parts of a piece. So this drawing I made to start off kind of a series I wanted to see if I wanted to do, which is to explain a color without using the color. No words, no nothing. You just have a mood that explains a color. And this one represented blue because it was like, rainy day, foggy out, going out for a walk right after a rainfall, things like that. I wanted to express the mood of like blue, of just this almost a melancholy feel to it. But I ended up really muddying everything. So there's like spots where it gets really dark, but only on the character. And there's spots it gets really white, only on the character. And while you can argue that, okay, that puts a lot of attention to the character. All right, so this thing is like really muddied and like you can't quite see it so well. Oh, but here's this really bright thing right in the middle. So all of your attention is drawn towards this. But that's not the purpose of the piece. The purpose of the piece is to set a mood. How do you set a mood? Well, most of the time it's not by having a character in the middle of the thing that everything points towards that character. It's more better done with the environments and how they interact with the environments. And you can see I tried. I absolutely tried. I had the character kind of like angled downwards so that they're not super noticeable at the bottom. And so everything was more focused on their face, which was looking up at this. So it's like this is a bit more of a focus on it. But what I ended up doing was I used only the brightest colors and only the darkest colors on the character. What I could have done better was I could have brightened up the sky or brightened up these areas or make it still raining. That way I have white in strands going through here, because there's no reason whatsoever with what I had done here to make it not blacks and not whites. There's a lot of missed opportunity for like really dramatic shading in here, or like why did I make this black? This area right here. That's a knot in a tree. Those things are incredibly dark, actually. The insides are like gnarled wood, along with there not being any light going into there. I could have just made that spot almost straight black. I could have made it almost as dark. I could have just made it like that. See? Better piece already. So avoiding the color white and avoiding the color black is incredibly easy to do, as strange as that sounds. Because if you use them wrong, it hides things even more. But in my attempts to not hide things, I hid everything in this piece. So that's another really big one that I see a lot, is that people don't use black except for line work. People don't use white except for highlights and except for the background. All right, so this is the piece I said earlier where you kind of go in and sometimes there's a thing that you don't notice that other people notice. Now, this was actually the last thing I did for my college courses before I ultimately left the schools. And the purpose of the project was to draw a fear. So I went with one that I had actually developed because mushrooms are creepy as heck, man. And I went with mycophobia, which is a fear of mushrooms. So I found some mushrooms that were really interesting. I like sketched them out, and I spent actually almost weeks just drawing out different mushrooms and like different elements, like the skull head, and doing all this stuff, like figuring out how all this works and all this. Also, I was wrong. This piece is also traditional. If you're wondering, the last piece was digital. This one is traditional. The rest should be digital. If I remember correctly, the rest should be digital. I'm going to say this in one more piece after the next one turns out to be traditional that I had forgotten about. But ultimately, this thing actually got a lot of critique on it, which is all fully justifiable, fair critique. Things like, I don't know where this is. Is this in a cave? Is this in a forest? And you could argue that that's not really that important, but I made a very clear effort to put in these trees. Why are these why are these things here if you don't really know what the area is? Then you get kind of nitpicky, like, oh, the hatching lines get like at a totally different angle down here versus up here, and like they kind of change around, things like that. Totally a fair justification. But I put this in here for the reason of like sometimes things get noticed that you don't intend. And I actually had a funny quip in this where once this was pointed out, I said it was a feature, not a flaw, as part of it. So someone had pointed out, it looks like someone is buried here. Like this is their head, and you can see kind of like the form of their body as though like they're just kind of buried here. And this is their feet sticking up that are being turned into mushrooms. And I couldn't unsee that anymore. This thing that I spent weeks working on, I suddenly can only see a guy buried in the image itself. And in the end, it kind of like works towards it because, you know, it's supposed to be this creepy thing. But it's an important lesson in sometimes you just can't see otherwise. Hey, it's a small dude. It could be a Smurf, or it could be a really big skull. It's not actually strictly speaking the best example of this, but I don't have a lot where people are actively going through and be like, hey, this thing looks like this thing, because that's oftentimes seen as kind of a rude thing to do. So lucky me, I don't have a lot of people who follow me that do that type of thing. But at the same time, I kind of want them to, because I kind of want to see these mistakes. But on the other hand, it's like oftentimes it's just the connections don't make any sense. It's one of those weirder ones, but it's one that is also important to at least regard as an option. So the next three here are actually going to be about anatomy. Now, if you're looking to be an artist, learn anatomy. I don't care how you do it, learn anatomy. If you're like sketching out stuff, learn anatomy. If you're like drawing like cartoony doodles, learn anatomy. If you're just going to be working on anime, learn anatomy. Anatomy, 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 anatomy. It is incredibly fun once you get started on it, and I see very little reason not to learn it. It seems like more of a hindrance. Even if you spend a little bit of time starting on it, you can, at the very least, correct the mistakes that you make. And for any argument of, like, this thing, like, I don't draw in a style that needs anatomy, you need to know how it works in order to break it. If you don't know how it works, then you're not going to break it properly, and then it'll look weird. Even if it's like intentionally supposed to look kind of weird, you can make it look weirder. If you know how arms work, how the joints work, you can really break those things so they look really, really odd in your style, not break physically. We're out of October. We're not doing that here. So this piece was part of a speed art series that I did where I was adamant at not showing anyone the sketch, and it was a disaster. I spent so much time working on this thing. In the sketches leading up to it, I like designed this creature that's going to be attacking the main hero, and like this weird thing. And I spent so much time like designing this armor piece so that it would seem like really noticeable in the piece. And what ended up happening was I never showed it to anyone to tell me what the hell's wrong with this thing's arm. So for case of anatomy, if nothing else, learn a bunch of like rule of thumbs, wherein if this thing's here, then this other piece should be here. That can get you started. One really good one is the elbow should be, if the arms are sitting down, like just arms at your sides, they should be about in line with your belly button. That's a really, really good way to put it. Not always the case. Some people have really long, lanky arms. Some people have a shorter torso, but rule of thumbs are just that. They're just basic general guidelines. If this is the case, then this person's elbow would probably be down past their hips. Rule of thumb for anatomy: learn to draw thumbs. So what ended up happening was, instead of this dramatic scene, all I can think is, what on earth happened to her arms between the last drawing and this one? Can I make up something about like this aperture on her arm made her arm bigger? Maybe I can make that up as a canon thing. But in the end, it ends up feeling like this piece wasn't planned out properly. If there's such a big error, and it's the easiest thing to fix. Look, there's a joint here. Move it here. Make this the arm, and like reduce the hand size a little bit. That would have been a lot stronger. And it's one of those times where I should have just like got off my high horse, and instead of keeping this as some like secret project I was working on, just show someone the freaking sketch. Anyone I was with at the time could have corrected this for me, and it's something that I never did. But the point of this thing is self-critique, as in, you don't always show it to someone else. And this is something that, this piece is why it's good to learn these things. I didn't want to show this to anyone, and maybe I could have avoided this if I had spent the time to work on this a little bit longer. Also, this piece was made in probably the beginning of last year. So the things I was making around this time also were like not that great. But this thing I just spent a lot of extra time on. So this is also like, look at me being an artist type of piece. And I didn't want to show it to anyone. Still made the speed art though. So on to the idea of learning freaking anatomy. Be careful when you hide things. And again, it is a lesson I had to learn the hard way. This one is actually even older. This is in 2014 I had made this piece. But where the heck is her... What's going on here? I had this idea for a nice little pose of like, you know, this person kind of sitting down, crossing her arms over her legs. You know, it's like, you know, a little bit of an interesting pose. But what ended up happening was I don't understand legs. So we're gonna kind of break this down. Now I did okay with the anatomy of like how long the arms are, but when it comes down to legs, I clearly didn't quite understand it here. So what I think I was doing was I had a joint here because that kind of lines up with this, but with how thin this leg is, it implies that this should have a line here as well that kind of like bends into the outline. So what I end up having here is I have a very, very thick leg with a very, very thin leg behind it, because this leg has to be like this big if it gets this small down here. And then I have this leg not really wanting to attach properly because it goes down like this, wherein as legs approach the torso, they get larger. So they get thicker. So it should actually be an angle like this. And these seem like very, very minor problems. In fact, each one individually is a very minor problem. In fact, no one really would have noticed had like this joint kind of just not been here if I had this line properly, and if I maybe lowered this one, maybe. No one would have noticed this leg looks really big and this leg looks really small if I didn't have the error up here. But all these things together end up making it look like this leg stops here and this leg starts over here with no transition or anything there at all. And this is an older piece, and you can probably say, like, you know, I wasn't that great of an artist. I didn't have the skills to notice these things. But now I do. Now I can point out these mistakes that I've made and point them out in other people's work too. So this is like one problem that you can get if you just learn a little bit of anatomy. Just like, there's websites that let you learn anatomy really easily for the sakes of drawing. Those ones are absolutely great. One of them is called Pixel Lovely. Pixel Lovely is a fantastic one to go to because it's just figures, and it sets up random figures, and you just draw the figure. That's the entire point of the website, and I absolutely love it. So just use it. Yes, Malachite. That would be wonderful if you could link that website. That's one that I use a lot as well to try and like practice anatomy stuff. But as much as I will point out that it is people for those. It's not strictly furries, but anatomy is anatomy. You can use it for furries. But unfortunately, when it comes down to drawing people, it doesn't really help you with the specifics of furries. Things like ears, noses, wings, and tails. There's a condition that I see in a lot of furry artwork, and once I point this out, you might start noticing it a little bit more, and I call it hip tail. The point is that it's where you absolutely have to show the whole tail, or as much of the tail as possible, to the point of it looks like it's coming out of their hip, not out of their back. And you see this a lot in people who have very, very short-tailed characters. When they get them commissioned out, the people, like, you know, all credit to the artists that draw the stuff, they want to show off as much of the character as possible. And sometimes the tail will just be completely hidden. And, you know, that's a very important, that's an important part of the character. But if it's an important part of the character and you have to show it, change the pose to show the item. Don't change the anatomy of the character to show the item. Here, we have one where I did this completely by accident, and I look at the sketch, and it looks like it makes sense in the sketch. I drew the thing, and it didn't make sense in the thing with the way I shaded it. If I had shaded it differently, it would have looked fine. But basically, what had happened here, it looks like the tail is coming out of her side. It's like, you know, her butt's like right here, kind of, this is basically the shape of her back. This would make more sense for the tail. But what I did was I had it coming out here. Now in the sketch for this piece, I had it basically swooping down and going up. That would have taken me 10 seconds to fix if I had just noticed that. If I just slowed down just a little bit. You're going to hear me say if I had slowed down just a little bit a lot in this, because that is something that I struggle with a lot, is just learning when the heck to stop and just look at the thing before I continue. So if I had just like moved it up here, that would have completely solved this problem of hip tail. And you're probably going to be seeing this a lot. Like I said, especially with really short tails, you're going to be seeing, like, it's just hip tail. It's like the tail is attached to their side, apparently. Should I just make this a canon part of the character because it's so common? I'm the only one who's willing to hide my character's own tail. I don't say this to, like, rag on anyone at all. And I always just find it a funny thing whenever I notice it, just because of how common it seems to be. But in this case, if I had darkened this a little bit more, that would have fixed the problem as well. Again, I avoided black because this is the dark part of the character's fur, this area right here. And I didn't want it to be too dark. For some reason, I didn't want it to be too dark. So what I ended up doing was I made it too light. So it looks like the light is hitting it when it shouldn't be. So it really highlights it. So we have this dark spot here, dark spot here, dark spot here. Neon tail! And it really highlights this problem that I ended up making. Slow down. Learn to slow down. And this drawing, I think didn't turn out too well. I spent a lot of time with the pose trying to look like the cloth got dragged down. By the way, like, once you learn how to draw anatomy stuff, clothing becomes a lot easier. If that's not incentive enough to learn how to draw anatomy, is once you understand how clothing just like lays on a character. You can learn how drapery looks all day long, but once you understand how it looks on an arm, then it starts to click. So that's something that came out of wanting to learn anatomy a little bit better. But like overall, a lot of this piece I really, really enjoy. But when it really came down to it, I did hip tail. I made a hip tail. The character doesn't have a hip tail. Burps at the worst time, everybody. I have a microphone right in my face. So what do? I have to burp. But I freaking made a hip tail when I shouldn't have. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is a much older piece as well. Again, beginning of 2015, because I didn't have a certain logo here. Now, this is a little bit more of a complex thing. And the next two pieces are going to be more complex problems. This one is for line weight. Now, line weight is a term that I see thrown around a lot. And essentially what it means is how thick your lines are. So really, really thin lines, really, really thick lines, and anything in between. That's line weight. And line weight can be used to show things. A very thick line implies a lot of weight, implies a lot of heaviness, implies a lot of like importance to that thing. A really, really thin line can be like quaint, maybe not so noticeable, or higher detail put into the item. I mean, try drawing a really detailed box with really thick lines and tell me how that goes. But you can do it much easier with really, really thin lines. But the one thing you shouldn't do is mix line weights in a single line. You can do one or the other and be just fine, but the moment you do a really, really thick line that ends in a really, really thin line, constantly, it gets a little bit pointless. And I don't know why I had done any of this, actually. But, like, it got really, really thick up here, then it thins out, and then it gets thick again. Now, the argument can be made that it's, like, these are the important parts. That's not so important of a line, because it's where it changes. That's the important part. that's not how line weight works, and especially when used like this. So one of those more complex terms is going to be line weight, is just how thick your lines are and what that means for the piece that you make. But when you start to mix meanings, you start to confuse people. And that should be a very like universal term for this entire panel, is it's really, really easy to want to do a little bit of everything when you just gotta drop something. Like, I could spend 10 minutes on this piece and make this thing 1,000 times better. If for nothing else, I just have to redo the lines because it just looks like Look, I have no idea what I was thinking of when I drew this drawing in particular. So the last of like the more complex things we're going to talk about is something that's used in a lot of photography, and that's called rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds is that you imagine that there's 9 equally spaced boxes set up across your entire piece, entire screen. I'm not making these straight boxes. I don't draw straight things very often. Oh my gosh. Look, I have a line tool. Let's use a line tool. I use line tools. That's a really thick line. I'm prepared. So, the rule of thirds is you break up your piece into essentially this. And where these lines intersect, like here and here, here and here, are very, very high focus areas. Things sitting along this line, these guidelines that we have, are going to seem more important. They're going to stand out a little bit more. Now, this is one of those like you're doing illustration level things. This isn't like I'm drawing a character or I'm drawing just an interesting pose. This is like I'm drawing a full-on illustration. I'm putting a character into a setting, into a world. I'm going to say an emotion and like a story and like prance and like throw glitter everywhere. And that's where you get to the more complex things. But by following these lines, things feel a lot less cluttered. They feel like things are a little bit more important. So what did I do wrong? Well, I want you to kind of see, where did I put the character? The one character in this entire piece. I put them off the line. I put them up here. Now you can say, oh, they hit the line. That's great. Yeah, well, when the character has massive wings and like tails and stuff, they're going to hit some line at some point. But the point of it is that their head is along a line, or their spine follows a line, mostly. And sometimes you have like a really crazy pose like this. It's like, good luck having a line follow. Good luck having something follow this. Yeah. So, what could I have done differently? Well, admittedly, I could have just cropped this image a little bit better. If I just, I don't know, say, cropped it like this, edit, crop. Ignoring the red lines because I didn't get rid of those first and they're on the same layer. I have these things saved in a totally different folder in case I had messed these up. Ha ha ha, planning. But if I just move these around, then this character is suddenly on a line. Again, ignore, this line doesn't exist. But that would have fixed that problem entirely. I mean, ultimately I wanted this piece to be like big and wallpaper sized, so I didn't want to crop it. All right, well, what can I do differently? Well, what I could have done differently was I could have grabbed this character and moved them down to about here and just like remade the rocks. Really, it just comes down to I can just grab this character. Whoops, did that wrong. But I can just grab the character and real quick photo manipulation because technology is a wonderful thing. And if I just move them down a little bit, second time's the charm, then I could have just filled in those areas. That's gray. That's gray, and that's like rock, and that's stone. That's just normal default colors. I could have filled that all in really easily without actually damaging the character at all, and I would have made a stronger piece. Instead, it felt like the character got pushed up into the corner. Like, I'm just going to sit over here while you appreciate this rock slope that you probably spent more time to draw because you clearly don't care about me up here. Also, I have an issue with like how detailed I made some specks of stars and then just left nothing. Nothing. In an area with no bright lights, you should be able to see nearly every single star up in the sky. But how can you catch this early? Like, that's something that is really the important part of this. How can you catch this? Well, you draw the lines in. You put these lines in. Now again, this one isn't really so important unless you're doing a more illustration style thing. If you're setting up a scene, if you're making like a dramatic moment, or if you're like showing everyone where this character is sitting, then it's much more important that you use these terms, and these terms being rule of thirds and like anatomy and line weight and all those things. If you're just kind of drawing a character there, then maybe you can get away without really doing it. I mean, having a character in the middle of a scene is totally fine. But if the character's in the middle of a scene and you're trying to show like the whole street, then they're going to be blocking a lot of stuff. Throwing them off to the side will help out your piece quite a bit. If for no other reason, then you get another line and more space to show off what you might want to show them. So this is the last of the pieces that I grabbed from before that I made mistakes on and didn't correct. I have 3 pieces up here of things that I kind of liked, the first ones that I made, but I wanted to work on them more. I wanted to do something else. I took the critique that I saw in my own pieces that I didn't catch when I'd made them, and I worked on them. So let's start with this one. This one actually wasn't made too long ago. This is for a project of mine, but I'm not going to get into that. That's not the point of this stream. But I wanted to have this character kind of like dramatically looking over their shoulder at the viewer, at the camera, as I tend to call it. I did said air quotes. You can't see the air quotes. I did air quotes. The camera. And I did things here that I absolutely love, and I still love them a lot. So what did I do right? Let's ignore the character entirely. Hold on. Okay. Let's ignore the character entirely for a second. It's just no one cares about the character. Let's look at this background. I like this background a lot. So, like, I had the little neon signs, and it looks like it's reflecting on a rain-streaked surface. Like, the way that this thing got put down. And this is just, like, me painting it in. I really didn't aim for a lot of this as well. It made it look like there's, like, building here, and, like, there's this overhang building up here, and this other building right next to it. And like this cable, I really like how this turned out, just because it's this really like glowy color that's jumping across it, but it doesn't hit this other cable back here, so you know that there's depth going into the back of the piece, and it's all covering up this one in the back that's desperately trying to be noticed, but it's kind of a more doled out color. Like, I absolutely adore this background. Like, I could have probably like trimmed this one up a little bit just so it's not so rough that you can see here. Maybe I had this gradient working out a little bit better for me, because it kind of doesn't end where the building seems to end. It kind of ends on this spot arbitrarily for some reason. The real problem I had with this piece was the character. Now, this character, the personality of the character is like actually very, very shy. Like, cannot function in society shy unless she has a mask of hers. So I drew her outside looking kind of meh. Not afraid to be outside, like so painfully shy she can't function in real society as she's supposed to be. I didn't draw her being like super serious. I just kind of drew her as like, oh yeah, no, you're behind me, aren't you? And like, I didn't even draw her angry. That would have been a little bit better of a piece. But another couple of little things that I did wrong here was I didn't pay attention to the anatomy. I didn't really find out where the shoulders should have gone. I didn't find out what the pose for the neck would have been. And if I don't know what those things are, I can just get a photo. Like, look online for reference photos of people in this position. I can guarantee you there's like dramatic poses just like this all over the internet. If you can't find anyone, get a friend and ask them to pose like this. Take a photo of them. They don't need to have a super serious face. I mean, come on, you're going to be erasing the face anyways and replacing with something else. But knowing like where the head is, where the spine is, where the shoulders are, where the box for the torso is, all these things are really, really important to getting the proper pose. And what ended up happening here was I just kind of had a character that kind of just looked like she was standing out in the rain, and she has like this kind of robot-y thing going on with her arm that is kind of just like resting on her shoulder as well, not even like a part of her shoulder. And like I did this glow effect where this stuff is glowy, but I ended up putting it up here really strongly for no reason, so it kind of makes it look like she has like 9 o'clock shadow across this whole dark spot. And furthermore, I didn't put any black in this thing for shading. This is the closest I got, was this color right here. And you can argue, that's incredibly dark, isn't it? Yes, that color is incredibly dark. Unfortunately, when you put the really incredibly dark color on the character's clothing, and not in like the shadows of the background, it ends up making it feel like it's really bright out when it really shouldn't be. In this case, I mean, it's neon lit up in the middle of the night type of look, and I made it look like it might be kind of getting darker out tonight, just because I didn't really push the shadows that I should have. The highlights I did okay with, just because the highlights, they weren't really the important thing. It was more so the color of them. I wanted like it to be colorful rather than bright and vibrant, especially since it's supposed to be kind of darker out. Though the argument can be said that anything that glows when it's really dark out really freaking glows by comparison. So I should have really pushed the highlights, like make this area up here. I'm using the wrong color. Oh no, I gotta ruin my red color. Whatever will I do? My red color slightly changed. I'm sorry, everybody. But like really push this color to be really, really bright and vibrant blue. Maybe like dull this spot a little bit because that kind of creates a weird color. Or on the flip side, spread it all the way up here. If it's glowing from this spot, draw a circle, draw a circle, draw a circle. I should be hitting these spots. I should be going up here almost. Instead, I kind of just like, it's a flashlight right here and only here, nowhere else. And it gives off a kind of a weird effect with that. So I like this piece. I like this piece a lot. I used it for a speed art. I actually specifically made it to try out a different recording style. I liked the piece, but I could have done better. So learning what I did here, learning what I just explained to you, I kind of took another crack at this drawing. I spent another couple hours on it. It's like, not this drawing specifically, but the time this one took me and then another couple hours. Really, I didn't add in a whole lot of extra time. And this is what I ended up making. Self-critique, everybody. Self-critique. Fairly. I didn't beat myself up over the other drawing because the reasons why those faults were there was because it was very spur of the moment. I didn't get a lot of research material. I didn't get any reference photos. I didn't look up what neon lights look like on metallic surfaces. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I did a little bit of research and I learned a lot from my past mistakes. And so let's go through this. So I got rid of the glow from the clothing because there's no purpose. That was too much glow. No need. Too much glow. Just get rid of it entirely. Good. Done. Glow is gone. Except for what's important. So the character, I said before, she's supposed to have a mask when she's outside, and then she actually will be able to interact with the world. So I gave her that mask. There's no reason to have her looking back at the camera when I could make it so much more ominous and so much more interesting and so much more dramatic if I just given her the freaking mask. So I gave her the freaking mask, and it gave me an excuse to have more glowy bits to compensate for what I lost here. I learned that, okay, so circle, circle, circle. Notice that the second circle hit all this spot right here. Third circle is right at the edge of where you see that color affecting it. You can argue it would be glowing back here too, but I actually do have a little bit of glow there. If you see it, it's really, really subtle. You don't quite see it that well. I maybe could have done a little bit better there. I made the eye glow and hit all of these strands again, circle, circle, circle. Oh, look, there's a spike, 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 spike. Notice that I'm hitting all the spots of the light that I have here, because that's how light works. It just goes out until it's not going out anymore. It just hits the thing, and that's something's in the way now. So I did that, and then I did glowy effects down here along the arm to really, really highlight the robot arm, and that's something I really wanted to do. I found out where the shoulders should be positioned, where they're actually kind of drooping down a little bit more. I found out how the neck turns around so that I can actually draw this thing in properly. I got rid of like that really annoying line there because there was no purpose. If I had the character's head facing sideways, you know what the heck is going on. And I made the arm look like it's attached to the character instead of just kind of like a cup sitting on top of the thing. That's like, I'm balancing this arm here. And along with that, I put more effort into the background as well. I loved that background from the other one, and I wanted to capture a lot of the same feel for it. So that's what I did. I went through and I found what I enjoyed about it. I got rid of the multicolors. I thought it would look better with just one color universally. So that's what I did. I put some text in here, just like, oh, it just says a thing, just so that like it's not just color lights. They look like they're advertisements in part of a city. I put a little bit more effort into building these structures, like with these weird holes in them, and like spending a little bit more time on the angle so that it's all angling downwards. So it's like leaving room for the character's head to be the big important middle thing. And all of this is just because I knew what to look for. I couldn't have made this if I didn't make the other piece. If I had just jumped in directly into like this and I thought, oh, I can make this great thing, I would have made much of those same mistakes I made in the last one because I didn't slow down enough to make them that time. What would make me slow down and make them the imaginary other time I made it? And the last thing I did was I really pushed the highlights and really pushed the shadows. Last time, that darkness was like, ooh, something about this. That was my darkest color before. With this being this dark now, I'm able to really, really highlight, oh, it's dark. It's dark out. It's nighttime. This character's out in the middle of the night. All these lights are neon lights that people are trying to advertise for nightlife people. It just fits in a lot better. And since I push those darks a lot darker, I can bring the highlights out a lot brighter and really, really put focus on this dramatic, like piece of this character's face and this color hitting the front and like the little splashes from the rain. I love drawing rain. Can I just say I love drawing rain? That's something I really enjoy. And if people who are following me are probably sick and tired of me drawing rain, but you know what? You're following me. You're stuck with me now. I'm going to be drawing rain. You're getting what you're paying for. You're not paying for anything. But this is one of those pieces that like I did better the second time. So on to another one. This is a experimental CD cover for a thing that I liked. And this was, nope, wrong layer. This was the beginning of 2015 as well. Now you're going to see a couple of things I pointed out before. Thick line into thin line. Let's actually use the green I used before. Thick line into thin line. Thick line into thin line. Literally, it's curving down and then curves back again. In the exact same curve, I use a different thickness of line. Come on. There's a style to that, sure, but not when it's this subtle. I need to make it more dramatic for it to be a style. And the pose is really awkward as well. You don't really know where the character is jumping off from. You don't really know what the motion is here, is what's exactly going on exactly. Quite frankly, I don't know. And the position of everything is really boring as well. We're seeing this straight from the side. Just, yep, I am sitting down on the ground right over here. It's like, oh, I'm just sitting right here, seeing this whole event happen. For a CD cover, those things get a lot more dramatic, a lot more interesting. So what I did instead was I changed the perspective. Instead of it being like from the side, I moved it up here. And this is what I got. Now, this is also traditional. I changed it to a totally different medium, mainly because I was being a little bit lazy at the time. We all have those moments. And I was sketching this out already on a piece of paper. So I was like, all right, let's just finish it on the paper that I sketched it out on because the inking tools I used. And actually, fun fact, the pen I used for all the line work in this thing, literally this whole thing, is the exact same pen I used in the Wendigo piece at the very beginning of the panel here, or stream. I'm going to call it panel because I've been calling it a panel. But what I did was I just changed the angle of it. In fact, the pose is most exactly the same. Notice that it kind of curves over. One leg is up. The other leg is going straight down. That I did very little to change it. But changing the angle of it itself made the piece a lot more dramatic, made the piece a lot more interesting. You can ignore this, honestly. I think this didn't turn out super well. It's really crammed into the corner. Like, this is not the important thing. Let's just let's not pay attention to this. Let's pay attention to the giant guy jumping over the piñata. And part of this character's persona is that they kill and eat piñatas. So I thought it'd be funny to title it Piñata Hunter and have the other piece where like the track list would be where the where the track list would be on the back would be the like kill essentially afterwards. But notice how I didn't make it the same piñata. If I had done this differently, I probably would have made them the same because that might be a little bit more interesting, and I would explain why this one is like crying a piñata tear. This image is a little bit dark for how colorful it is. Let's actually move on. But again, these two images were made within a couple of days of each other. And it's purely a case of I could spot these differences. And it's purely because I got used to being able to spot those differences. It's not shameful to say I messed up. It's not bad to say I could have done better. It's bad to say, like, I put in the best I could, literally the best effort I could, but it looks terrible to me. No, it looks awesome. You did the best you freaking could. Learn from your mistakes, come back to it in a year. Then you can try it again. Speaking of which, people who've been following me for a long time, which actually very few people in the stream here are, so I won't really be saying that, might recognize this piece. This piece is, I think, the oldest thing I'm going to be showing here. It was made probably at the beginning of 2014. Now, this piece was made as a art trade with a friend of mine who they're a musician, and they got a violin from their grandmother. And they got this violin from their grandmother before their grandmother passed away. And this violin was able to survive a house burning down. It was one of the only possessions that she had kept from this house after the fire. So when doing this art trade, I was just commissioning some music from him, and he wanted some artwork from me. This is what he asked for. He asked for him playing a violin in the rain. And this was long before everyone knew I loved drawing rain. So I was like, heck yeah, I'll love to draw this thing for you. And I made it, and I was so proud of it. Now let's break this thing down as to why I don't like this thing anymore. No, that's an unfair statement. Not why I don't like this thing anymore, where I could have done better with it. All right, so big focus here. Character playing a violin. Sweet. Now, why do we have all this blank space, all this blank space, all this blank space? We could crop this right along here, get rid of that thing, get rid of this spot entirely, and I've made this a little bit more horizontal. Let's get rid of this too. F it. We don't need that there. This would reinforce the rule of thirds. Make this a more dramatic piece. A lot more focused on the things that are important here. All right, sweet. We got rid of those things. Now, what do we do about the lighting effects? This lighting effect, this thing is burning, it's smoldering. I spent so much time on this thing. I probably spent more time on this spot right here than I did on the rest of the piece combined. That is a problem. And that is a problem you should be able to spot instantly. If you spend a ton of time on one tiny piece, it gets drowned out by how little time you spent everywhere else. So for this, I actually referenced the hand, how to draw the hand in that specific pose, because that was a pose that I really needed for this in order for it to be effective. But for a piece for a violin that survived the fire, it's intact quite a bit, isn't it? In fact, this whole part down here is totally fine. there's nothing wrong with this thing at all. In fact, actually, I this is gonna break soon, and it's gonna probably snap back all those, so it will be unfunctional soon. But for a piece that survived the fire, fuck, that thing's looking really, really nice. And one swear I'm allowing myself this stream. Oh crap. Other things that I done wrong here was it's a very, very boring pose. Now, for a piece that's supposed to be dramatic and interesting and emotional, especially for the person who I gave this to, they're just standing here. In fact, if we kind of draw out the spine and the like shoulders and the body and stuff, it's almost completely level in both cases. In fact, actually, it's like going down there and going down there. They're almost the exact same angle. And that's actually a issue. Normally you want to have them on opposite axis just because like that's more of a better pose that people naturally stand in. And if a character is kind of like stiff as a board, it just doesn't quite feel right. Proper posture is something to note. Having proper posture is like straight back, like straight shoulders, but that's not how you rest. That's not where you're standing. That's not like how you're doing a dramatic violin play on the top of a rooftop with a burning violin in the rain. You're not going to be like in a perfect position for playing that thing. This character is probably like going through a really tough time playing this thing. In fact, I mean, breaking it down in a certain way, you could even say the last memory of this person's grandmother is literally burning away in their hands. Why would they be in this straight perfect pose for it? So pose work is something that I'm constantly striving to improve, and that's something I actually beat myself up about a lot, is having the proper pose, is like making it look right, because that can convey a lot of emotion just with that. Now, that's something I will say that I beat myself up with a lot, and a lot more than I really should, is like this pose is improper. And of course, we can always go down here and point out that pinky is really long. The pinky is the shortest finger. Like, I should have ended this here and then thinned this out. But hands were not exactly my strong suit at this point in time, so I'll give myself a pass in that, purely because I know I did the best I could. This piece right here is the absolute best I could have done at this point in time at the beginning of 2014. This is the beginning of 2015. Learn from your mistakes and make them better. This piece, and this actually was unwarranted. The last piece, like, I made as part of an art trade. This one, I was like, you know what? I want to make this better. I feel bad because I know I can do better on this, and I know that this is a very important time, or at least a very important piece in your life. So I was like, you know what? I want to improve this. And also, I had a lot of love for the original artwork. I wanted to do it better. So here we have the Burning Violin Mark II. This one is properly messed up. Like, there's actually a part missing down here. I probably should have poked a couple holes in it. Instead, what I did was I just kind of did an effect over it. But you can see where the wispies are of raindrops hitting it and like smoldering it up. You can see where on multiple parts along the bow that this thing is burning. You can see that I spent more time putting light effects on it. In fact, this thing burning is the only light source for the entire piece. And I spent more time on the pose. And it doesn't really look like it. Because over here it was wrong layer. Over here it was head back, kind of like this. I mean, it's kind of tough to find where the spine is here. Over here, on the wrong layer, head, and it kind of curves this way. It kind of curves accepting the bow, or accepting the violin. And this lets you get a lot stronger of a feeling for what's going on. He's holding this thing very, very loosely or lightly, and he's just kind of looking at the thing burning. And really what this thing was a big experiment in how I could improve over a year. Not only was it I wanted to do better with your work, but I wanted to see where I was. And it was a great opportunity to break down what I had done wrong in the past. Not what I did the absolute best I could, but what I honestly think I could do better at. And with that, I think that's probably a good spot to end off the stream. I went through all the pieces that I had and only slightly went over time. Hey, look at that. And I hope that you learned something through this, of me taking apart a lot of my own pieces, saying why they aren't quite perfect. And I use perfect very loosely because absolutely no one is making anything perfect. But everything has something a little bit wrong about it. And noticing what's important to fix and what's not is things that can help you improve your own work.